today's session, we're going to be working with a plugin called Slider Revolution, which is also the name of this page. And if I look on the page, I see a piece of short code right here referring to a rev_slider. So let's look and see what this page looks like and what this short code is doing. And then we'll talk about how to create a slider using Slider Revolution. I'll click the permalink here to get to the page. Here is our page. Here is the first slide of our slider. Notice that we have animation bringing in text, and we'll take it out in just a second. Here's our second slide, animation bringing our text in, and then the animation will bring that text out, and it'll loop back to our first slide. Just like that. So let's learn how to make this. Here we are at the dashboard of my page. I'm going to go down here towards the bottom where I see Slider Revolution here on my left-hand navigation. So I'll move over to Slider Revolution and select it. And here is the Slider Revolution page. Here are the three existing slideshows. So I'm going to go to New Slider and I'll click the plus to begin. That takes us to slider settings. We were first in all sliders. Now we're in slider settings. We're going to go with the default slider. They'll realize you can create them from posts, from specific posts, from Flickr, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and so on. We're going to stick with the simplest options here and continue. We're going to put in our slider title, our alias, and then get the short code that way. So I'll simply call this Demo Garden. I will also give our alias the same name, Demo Garden 1. And then here is the short code we'll be using, which is left bracket, rev_slider, space, alias equal, and then in quotes, demo space garden space 1. After that last quote, the right bracket. We'll work with a standard slider. You do have the hero scene option and the carousel slider option, but again, we're going with the most basic flavors today. Slide layout is probably best left to auto, though you do have full width and full screen available here. And you'll notice below me, as I click auto, full width, and full screen, the demos on these different size devices change so that we can see what this will look like on a desktop, a notebook, a tablet, or mobile. The large desktop size is sort of hardwired in here at 1240 pixels by 868 pixels, though you can go into these dialog boxes and change those sizes to whatever you like within reason. The notebook, tablet, and mobile options are all set at auto size, which I recommend you keep it at. That means it'll automatically resize your slideshow to fit with the size of the monitor that they are viewing your slideshow on. You can go to custom grid sizes, however, by clicking this little toggle right here and then changing these sizes to what you want them to be. I recommend leaving these on auto, and I also recommend, if you're working with a fairly large slideshow, to actually turn off the mobile version of the slideshow because it takes up so much screen real estate. So much of their screen will be the slideshow and they'll have to scroll down. And I'll tell you how to turn any of these options off in just a bit. Let's continue. I'm going to keep overflow hidden off, and I'm not going to give it a minimum or maximum height or width. I am going to ask it to respect aspect ratio, so I'll turn this toggle on. And now we're ready to continue, so I'm going to click Save Settings. We'll get the please wait a moment, which takes us to our third tab here, or the actual slide editor for the Demo Garden slideshow. So here's our first slide. We're going to change transparent to main background image, and we'll click Change Image. We're here in our image gallery. I'll choose this image, and we'll click Insert. Now that we've added this image to our slide as our main background image, it shows up here in our slideshow thumbnail, and it also shows up here in our slide pane below. And right down here is the timing for it. It fades in for about 2/3 of a second and then ends after 9 seconds. So let's add a layer here. We're going to add a layer of text. So I'm going to go Add Layer and then Text HTML, and this dialog box appears. And here is the text in our dialog box. Take a walk through our drought-resistant plants demonstration garden. We can see the actual text here on the slide. First thing I want to do is change the font size. I don't need to highlight the text here. I can just go up here, change my 20 to a 40, and then click somewhere. And then notice this doesn't change at all here within the dialog box, but my text here on the actual slide does grow larger. We're also going to change the line height to 40 as well. And then I'm going to select this and I'm going to size it a little bit and move it. I think over here is probably the best spot for it. So now we have our text. I'll set our animation next by clicking Animation. Here's our fade in options and our fade out options, and they preview as you hover over any given option. For instance, the slide mask from left, as I hover over, shows you how that will work. I think we're going to keep these fairly calm, so we'll do a fade in for our fade in and a fade out for our fade out. I am, however, going to change the times greatly to 1,000 milliseconds, which is, I believe, a second. And we can now play it as an animation. If I go just under my slide and click play, and I think we're good to go with that animation. Loop is next. This gives you some rather odd options, but I'll show them to you. Right now it's disabled, and I will leave it disabled. But for instance, a pendulum will have your text move on a pendulum, rotate will have your text rotate, and so on. I think we'll keep that disabled and continue. Visibility is important. This is where you can turn off visibility on specific devices. And I think you need to at least test any slideshow you work with on a mobile phone. And if it takes up too much screen real estate, in other words, if that end user is having to scroll way down to get to your actual content, I would click from on to off on this toggle right next to my phone just to get rid of the animation or of the slide for that device, because I think it's going to be unwieldy for an end user. And I think we'll leave it at that for our first slide. We'll quickly add another to show you how that's done. There are a lot of places where you think you can click here to add the slide. If you click the plus, nothing happens. If you click add slide, nothing happens. If you click add blank slide, however, that will work. It will say, please wait a moment. It will say leave page, but you're not going to be leaving the slideshow, so don't let this error message scare you. And we're now ready for that second slide. We can tell that we're working with the second slide because the bottom of it is dark. So we'll go to main background image to add another image. We'll click change image and we'll choose another from our media library. We'll go with this one and we'll click insert. And here it is now in the pane just below us where we can work with animations. I'm going to add a layer of text next, so text HTML. And here I'll put the text. Here's our text here in the text box. We can barely see it over our picture because the text is white. So we'll make a few changes up here under style. By the way, I didn't mention this last time. You can choose a font right here. We're going to go with the default font given to us by Slider Revolution. I'm going to change my color by going to select color. I can choose from the color picker here, or I can simply put in a hex code here in the hex code box. So I'll put in 3 zeros, which will give me black. I'll click somewhere to accept that change. We can now see our text. I'm going to take the text size up to 40 pixels and the line spacing to 40 pixels. We'll then resize this a bit and put it in its proper spot. I think that looks all right. We'll next go to animation. We're going to keep a fade in and a fade out, though again, there are a lot of choices to work with here. And as you hover over them, you can see it demonstrated here on the slide, but we'll stick with fade in and fade out. We'll again make our animation speeds at 1000 milliseconds or 1 second. We'll go to visibility, turn this off for phones, and we're good to go. We'll click Save Slide, and we're done. We'll now go back to slider settings. Don't let the leave page scare you. As long as you've saved your slide, you're good to go. And here, under number 2, so just at the top of this dialog box, we have our shortcode. So Control and copy to select this. And here we are at the dialog box for our slider revolution page. Here is our old shortcode. So I'm going to select that and Control V to replace it with our new shortcode. We'll click Update. And again, rather than hit Preview Changes, I prefer to go to the actual URL itself right below the title. So I'll click here. And here's our first slide and our text layer on our first slide. Our second slide and our text layer on our second slide. And this will then loop back to the first slide. And there's a very basic primer on how to work with slider revolution.